Hey, welcome back. So here we are talking about materials now. Once again, like I said previously, it's really complex. There's a lot of stuff to happen in materials. So what I want to do is just show you a real simple way of making a material and creating the three most important parts of a material in a game or in any kind of 3D application. And that is the diffuse map, which is the color of the object, the specular map, which is the shininess, and the bump map, or what we call a normal map in Unity, which is the height of offset, which basically means we can create like a bump or a crunchy texture with high and low areas, and that's what the normal map is going to do for us. All right, so I've got this scene here, and you can open this up. It'll be lesson 0802, and let's just save this out as such. I'm just going to make sure you guys open this scene up so you can check out what I'm working on. All right, so I have some textures or some materials in here already, but let's just create a new material for us. All right, so I'm going to say create, and let's create a material. All right, I'm just going to call this lesson 8 material. It's really nice to name your things material so you know later on when you're looking through assets that it is indeed a material. All right, now what is a material? All right, material is a node that collects information about pixels and graphics and some 3D rendering information as well. It uses a shader here. You see we have all these shaders. So here's our object. It is a material. Here is the shader. There are lots of shaders. You can write your own shaders. The shader contains all of the calculations necessary for converting certain pieces of information like 3D information, normals and lights and things, into 2D information, which is a pixel. So the shader contains all of that calculation information, right? And it's been written by someone, usually people at Unity. You can write your own. Other people have some online you can use. And there's tons and tons and tons of them. We're not going to go crazy looking through all these because it'll drive you nuts trying to figure out what shader is best for what. A lot of times you have to look some of these things up and just make some decisions based on what's best for your use. We're going to use the standard here, but I'm going to switch it to standard specular setup. The regular one has metallic properties, and metallic properties and specular properties are similar, but not quite the same. And if we really wanted a shader that just has simple specularity, we're going to go to our specular setup. All right, so let's explain some of these things. And I'm going to choose a color. Let's just make it kind of an aqua green here. Now our albedo slot, which used to be called diffuse, is basically color. You just think about this as the color this material is. I'm going to assign this material to the floor here. And it's assigned to the floor. It's my ground plane, and I'm going to rotate around. I've got a directional light, so the angle that the directional light is bouncing off is going to show me that specular highlight, so we can just kind of see this material here. All right, now smoothness here is going to control how smooth the specularity is. So the higher that is, the tighter that specular highlight is. That specular highlight being really tight would be really useful on something like a pool ball, and not so useful on something like a floor. All right, so now I've got a simple color going on here, and I've got a specular level. Now, if you notice, the more I turn this up, the more that specular highlight shines and nothing else does. So if I have no specular light or color at all, it will shine. It won't give me a specular highlight at all. If I have a lot, it will only give me information on the specular. So if I put it in the middle somewhere, and really more towards the end, we can adjust this per material if we want. And the smoothness will have a lot to do with how that appears. So we kind of mix these two together and decide how shiny this object is and what type of shine it is. Is it high gloss? Is it low gloss, etc.? All right, so these are the two most important channels. Now, not everything is specular. Some things are not specular. You can look around and see a world where cloth is not specular. Some types of paper are not specular. Human skin is specular. So when you're doing skin for characters, usually you want to use this kind of shininess. A lot of things in the world are shining. There are more specular objects in the world than non-specular. All right, so now what else do we need to look at? a normal map. Now, I can't show you a normal map unless I have a map, so I can't change it with a color, right? So what I'm going to do is, now I'm going to kind of shift into, we've created this material, we've assigned it. Now what I really want to do is start looking at the textures. So let's go to our textures here. Okay, so I have my color texture. All right, here's what the color texture looks like. And what I'm going to do is select my floor and my material. And I'm going to drag this color texture into this channel. Now, if I do that, I'm going to want to turn the color so I can mix and match the color with my color texture, which is really useful for some things, but it also is kind of confusing. I'm also going to change my tiling. This is how many times a texture is tiled over a surface. So let's make it 12 and 12, just so we can get kind of a kitchen tile floor going on here. All right, so it looks pretty good, right? I mean, we've got a color on there, it's tiled. What else can we do to make it better? All right, what we can do is create high and low areas. We want to make this kind of crunchy. A tile floor has a lot of divots, minute divots, small offsets from a flat surface, because right now it looks like, it kind of looks fake. It doesn't really look real. So if you look at this texture right here, and this texture is what we have as a bump map or a black and white texture. This is indicating high and low areas. And you can create your own. I created this from this map. I desaturated it. And then I put in some darker areas inside this. It's not the greatest bump map in the world, but it'll do for now. So what I'm going to do is, because we want to be able to have this in black and white, and I'll show you why in a minute, but I'm going to duplicate it. This is really nice. We can take two textures and turn them into multiple types of textures. So I'm going to call this, instead of spec, NRML. And you're going to do this in the lab, because I really want to reiterate how to do this. It's a complex process, and I want to go over it as many times as possible so that you understand how it works. All right, so now I've copied this. I've decided this is going to be my normal map. Now, normal maps are maps that give you height information. We're going to make this a normal map. Right now, it's a texture, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select texture type. I'm going to change it to a normal map. All right, so now I've changed this to a normal map. And here where it says create from grayscale, right? What that's going to do is create a height map from the grayscale values. And my bumpiness, generally the default is 0.25. That's pretty high. I think 0.1 for this map is going to be good. Oops, change it to 0.1 here. And you want to hit on apply. There we go. And you see all this, what it shows up as purple. This is what a normal map looks like. So these purple RGB values are representing how high these different pixels are. Okay, so now let's just drag that normal file into our normal map. Boom. And you notice what happens? Right, it looks like it has depth, but it seems like it has a little too much depth, doesn't it? This is what we call crunchy. A little bit too much depth for me. So let's turn this normal map down to 0.5. All right, not bad. Now you may look at this and say, hey, it looks pretty good. Looks like I have a nice texture. I got a normal map, so I got some type of height on it. Right, the grooves in the tile ground are looking good. Right, they're indented. Right, but what we're really missing here is the specular map, which means that I haven't told this where to be shiny and where not to be shiny. And if you look at a tile floor, generally speaking, the grouting in that tile is not shiny, whereas the polished part of the tile is shiny. So the places that are darker, that are indented, are going to be less shiny, and the places that are above the surface are going to be more shiny for multiple reasons. Those get more polished, the light hits them more because they're raised up, and the grouting obviously is a different type of material and usually is not specular at all. So what I want to do is use this or some derivative of this map as a specular map, telling the material where to be shiny and where not to be shiny. So the dark areas are going to be the areas that are not shiny, and the bright areas are going to be the areas that are shiny. And you're going to see this is going to make a tremendous difference on the appearance. Now, because I have a specular map, and normally we don't create an alpha from grayscale, this does not have an alpha channel. So if we have an alpha channel, that will be our gloss map, which is what tells it how to be shiny and where not to be shiny. So if I click on alpha from grayscale, right, once I do that, it's going to create an alpha channel from the grayscale map. And once I do that, I can now drag this into my specular channel. And you notice how the smoothness goes away, right? Why does that happen? Because the smoothness is now being taken care of by my alpha channel. And you can see what a difference that makes. So let's undo that. And let's redo that. And now the light is only going to shine right on the areas that are shiny, that I told it to be shiny. Now the one thing about a specular map here is that the specular color is actually also coming from the color map here. So the color being black and white is giving me the values of the specularity, and the gloss map is giving me where that is specular. So one of the problems with using the map, and this is very different than the way Maya works or the way other 3D programs work, where the specular channel is an independent alpha channel. But this is giving me color information and specular information. But you can see it makes a big difference. In the appearance. It's a richer appearance. And you can see how tremendously different it appears. I'm going to drop this down here. There we go. But you can see the visual sophistication gets much more rich and detailed when I throw that specular map in there. Okay, there's a ton of other stuff you can do with texture maps and materials, but I just want to give you an introduction to using 3 really important parts of a material, which is your color map, your height map or null map, that may even be too high still, and your specularity. So if you have all of these in a material, you'll get a pretty rich, detailed, and really interesting appearance. And let's tile that a little bit more, and you can see how the light does not shine, doesn't speculate, doesn't give you a specular highlight from those grooves. And that's a really sophisticated appearance because now you have grooves that are inset into the plane, and you have height bumps that are up above the surface, and the higher they are off the surface, they shine more, the more they shine, right? And the lower the object is in the surface, and the grounding does not shine. So you can see with some really simple material parameters, you can create a much more visually sophisticated appearance.